Hi there. Today I'm going to propose an alignment system. You can use this system to think about where you stand in your personal development and what you might need to improve. It will also be very tempting to shove the system down other people's throats, use it to label other people. I urge you to show some constraint in that regard. This is not what the system is intended for, although I will sometimes fall to this temptation as well. Anyway, in this kind of system, we have two scales. Each scale has two poles and one middle ground. And combining these two scales, we get a total of 9 boxes, 9 different alignments. The alignment system you might be most familiar with is for fiction, and it uses adjectives as poles. These adjectives are of limited usefulness in the real world. So I'm going to use two quite different scales. On the horizontal scale, we have how a person learn. How do we gain knowledge and how do we gain truth? How do we separate the real from the unreal, the truth from the falsehood? There are two very basic paths for this. We have one intellectual path where you figure it out as best as you can, and we have one social path where you learn from others. And of course, in both systems, you need to think a bit, and in both systems, you need to get information from others. But in the intellectual system, it's based very much on logic and reasoning and evidence. While on the social side, it's pretty much that, oh well, what other people seem to think and feel, that must be the truth. The vertical scale is about how enlightened you are. And of course, there are many different ideas about enlightenment. The ones I've been talking about here, we have the 5x3 model and we have the Decana model. There are also other models that are reasonable to use, but these are two primary ones. Links in the low bar. Of course, these models, as I have presented them, are intellectual models, so they are very much for the intellectual side of learning. For the social side of learning, you can sum up very much of it by simply understanding and respecting other people's point of view. From a social perspective, that sums up 4 of the 5 parts of the 5x3 model, and the one part that it doesn't sum up is irrelevant for the social side. It fails to sum up any of the 5 parts on an intellectual level, but on a social level it sums it up. So, okay, 9 alignments. On the enlightened side of the scale, we have enlightened in the middle. And on the left side, the knowledge side, we have intellectual integrity, while on the right side, the social side, we have social integrity. Of course, enlightenment in this case means that you have both intellectual integrity and social integrity. And you can't be on the enlightened side of the scale at all unless you have a little bit of both intellectual integrity and social integrity. But if your focus is on the intellectual side, if you are enlightened enough, you can emulate the social side a little bit, and vice versa. Going down to the neutral level, we have, let's call it intellectual independence on the intellectual side, middle ground on the middle, and social competence on the right side. And this is the reason I made this alignment system at all, that my recent video about intellectual integrity versus social competence, it was a bit flawed. You see, I made this dichotomy between intellectual integrity on one side and social competence at the other. And it seemed like an okay analogy at the time, but it didn't really work out. It was a bit biased and therefore a bit of a straw man. It is more reasonable to talk about intellectual independence versus social competence, or intellectual integrity versus social integrity. But of course, these are not the real verses we have here, because we have the lower end of the scale, those three alignments that lacks enlightenment entirely, or almost entirely, if we see it as a sliding scale, which we should. Okay, on the intellectual side, we have the intellectual bubble. On the social side, instead, we have the herd mentality. And if we combine these into one unified lack of enlightenment, then we have pure bigotry. And I think this is the key to the problem with intellectual integrity and social integrity. They are not really each other's opposites. The opposite is in the opposite corner of this square. The opposite of intellectual integrity is herd mentality. And the opposite of social integrity is the theoretical bubble. What I mean with the theoretical bubble is that you live in your own little abstract world where you can't understand other people's point of view at all, and although you pride yourself with being rational and all that kind of stuff, you don't really understand the world at all, because you haven't really grasped that it doesn't revolve around you at all. It doesn't revolve around you as a person or as a social actor in society, sure, but it doesn't revolve around your mind either. And that last part may be hard to grasp in your theoretical bubble. Just because you make certain distinctions and definitions doesn't make it the one and only truth for everybody. And just because other people see it from another point of view than you do doesn't in itself mean that they fail to understand that you are right. That's not how it works. The herd mentality, on the other hand, there we have the really dark side of social competence that I have despised so much all my life. This mentality that, oh, by the way, Godwin's law incoming here. So, okay, you're prepared. The mentality that, aha, the Nazis want to exterminate the Jews. Let's see if the Nazis are socially dominant or socially marginalized in our society. Aha, the Nazis are in power, therefore we should exterminate the Jews. But on the other hand, then, the Nazis are marginalized, then we should kill the Nazis instead to show how good we are to stand up against the evil ones. Of course, Nazism and the Holocaust is just a standard example. The basic thing here is that with a herd mentality, you're so eager to stand up against all the prejudices and injustices and so on that everybody already despises. But you will defend with your very life whatever prejudice and bigotry happens to be socially accepted at the moment. You just go with the flow, you stay with the herd. And it is to break this destructive mentality that we need intellectual integrity in our lives, not only in our science, but also in our lives. However, for breaking the theoretical bubble, we need the social integrity for people to pop out of their own theoretical bubbles. We need them to show them we need to show them the world, the people around them. Look at all these people. They have other points of view, and the world does not revolve around you. Of course, with pure social integrity, if you're so far in that corner that you're moving away from the enlightened middle, then you will have a very hard time grasping the big picture, grasping science, and so on. It will only be about respecting people's point of view, not this whole thing that not all evidence is equal. It's not only that the world doesn't revolve around you, it's also that the world doesn't revolve around your particular social group, the people around you. And it's also this one part of the 5x3 model that isn't included at all in social integrity. That part that the universe exists, the universe is not a conspiracy. That part is not included. The part that the universe does not revolve around any specific person or group, that is included. But I'm not so very sure about those first ones. Intellect and emotion, we need both and they need to work together, but they do clash sometime, and this is just something we have to work out together. But I hope this alignment model can be of use. That's all I have to say for today. Live long and prosper.